Prelude to the Stormlight. Cackluck rounded a rocky stone ridge and stumbled to a stop before the body of a dying thunderclast. The enormous stone beast lay on its side, rib-like protrusions from its chest broken and cracked. The monstrosity was vaguely skeletal in shape, with unnaturally long limbs that sprouted from granite shoulders. The eyes were deep red spots on the arrowhead face, as if created by a fire burning deep within the stone. They faded. Even after all these centuries, seeing a thunderclast up close made Cackluck shiver. The beast's hand was as long as a man was tall. He had been killed by hands like those before, and it hadn't been pleasant. Of course, dying rarely was. He ran at the creature, picking his way more carefully across the battlefield. The plain was a place of misshapen rock and stone, natural pillars rising around him. Bodies littered the ground. Few plants lived here. The stone ridges and mounds bore numerous scars. Some were shattered, blasted out sections where surge binders had fought. Less frequently, he passed cracked, oddly shaped hollows where thunderclasts had ripped themselves free of the stone to join the fray. Many of the bodies around him were human. Many were not. Blood mixed, red, orange, violet. Though none of the bodies around him stirred, an indistinct haze of sounds hung in the air, moans of pain, cries of grief. They did not seem like the sounds of victory. Smoke curled from the occasional patches of growth or heaps of burning corpses. Even though some sections of rock smoldered, the Dustbringers had done their work well. But I survived, Cackluck thought, hand to breast as he had hastened to the meeting place. I actually survived this time. That was dangerous. When he died, he was sent back, no choice. When he survived the desolation, he was supposed to go back as well, back to that place that he had dreaded, back to that place of pain and fire. What if he just decided not to go? Perilous thoughts, perhaps traitorous thoughts. He hastened on his way. The place of meeting was in the shadow of a large rock formation, a spire rising into the sky. As always, the 10 of them had decided upon it before the battle. The survivors would make their way here. Oddly, only one of the others was waiting for him. Jerezin. Had the other 8 all died? It was possible. The battle had been so furious this time, one of the worst. The enemy was growing increasingly tenacious. But no. Cackluck frowned as he stepped up to the base of the spire. 7 magnificent swords stood proudly here, driven point first into the stone ground. Each was a masterly work of art, flowing and designed and described with glyphs and patterns. He recognized each one. If their masters had died, the blades would have vanished. These blades were weapons of power beyond even shard blades. These were unique. Precious Jezrin stood outside the ring of swords, looking eastward. Jezrin! The figure in white and blue glanced towards him. Even after all these centuries, Jezrin looked young, like a man barely into his 30th year. His short black beard was neatly trimmed, though his once fine clothing was scorched and stained with blood. He folded his arms behind his back as he turned to Cackluck. What is this, Jezrin? Cackluck asked. Where are the others? Departed. Jezrin's voice was calm, deep, regal. Though he hadn't worn a crown in centuries, his royal manner lingered. He always seemed to know what to do. You might call it a miracle. Only one of us died this time. Tanel, Cackluck said. He was the only blade unaccounted for. Yes. He died holding that passage by the northern waterway. Cackluck nodded. Talon had a tendency to choose seemingly hopeless fights and win them. He also had a tendency to die in the process. He'd be back now in the place where they went between desolations, the place of nightmares. Cackluck found himself shaking when he had become so weak. When had he become so weak? Jezrin, I can't return this time. Cacklick whispered the words, stepping up and gripping the other's man's arm. I can't! Cacklick felt something within him break at that admission. How long had it been? Centuries? Perhaps millennia of torture. It was so hard to keep track. Those fires, those hooks digging into his flesh anew each day, searing the skin off his arm, then burning the fat, then driving to the bone. He could smell it. Almighty, he could smell it. Leave your sword, Jezrin said. What? Jezrin nodded to the ring of weapons. I was chosen to wait for you. We weren't certain if you had survived. A decision has been made. It is time for the Oath Pact to end. Cacklick felt a sharp stab of horror. What will that do? Ishar believes that so long as there is one of us still bound to the Oath Pact, it may be enough. There's a chance we might end the cycle of desolations. Cacklick looked into the immortal king's eyes. Black smoke rose from a small patch to their left. Groans of the dying haunted them from behind. There in Jezrin's eyes, Cacklick saw anguish and grief, perhaps even cowardice. This was a man hanging from a cliff by a thread. Almighty be above, Cacklick thought. You're broken too, aren't you? They all were. Cacklick turned to walk to the side, where a low ridge overlooked part of the battlefield. There were so many corpses, and among them walked the living. Men in primitive wraps carrying spears topped by bronze heads. Juxtaposed between were others in gleaming plate armor. One group walked past 4 men in their ragged tan skins or shoddy leather, joining a powerful figure in beautiful silver plate, amazingly intricate. Such a contrast. Jezrin stepped up beside him. They see us as divinities, Cacklick whispered. They rely on us, Jezrin. We're all that they have. They have the radiance. That will be enough. Cacklick shook his head. He will not remain by this. The enemy. He will find a way around it. You know he will. Perhaps. The King of Hells offered no further explanation. And Talon? Cacklick asked. The flush of burning, the fires, the pain over and over and over. Better that one man should suffer than 10, Jezrin whispered. He seemed so cold, like a shadow caused by heat and light falling on someone honorable and true, casting this black imitation behind. Jezrin walked back to the ring of swords, his own blade formed in his hands, appearing from mist wet with condensation. It has been decided, Cacklick. We will go our ways, and we will not seek out one another. Our blades must be left. The Oath Pact ends now. He lifted his sword and rammed it into the stone with the other 7. Jezrin hesitated, looking at the sword, then bowed his head and turned away, as if ashamed. We chose this burden willingly. Well, we can choose to drop it if we wish. What do we tell the people, Jezrin? Cacklick asked. What will they say of this day? It's simple, Jezrin said, walking away. We tell them that they finally won. It's an easy enough lie. Who knows? Maybe it'll turn out to be true. Cacklick watched Jezrin depart across the burned landscape. Finally, he summoned his own blade and slammed it into the stone beside the other 8. He turned and walked in the direction opposite from Jezrin, and yet he could not help glancing back at the ring of swords and a single open spot, the place where the 10th sword should have gone, the one of them who was lost, the one they had abandoned. Forgive us, Cacklick thought, then left. This was the prologue of Brandon Sanders' The Way of Kings. And this was a test by Loony to see if he can make a YouTube video. Thanks for listening, I guess. Bye.